This is Prime Sports NASCAR on Prime Sports Network. Eric Smith from RaceReviewOnline.com joins me. No CJ we're doing this week, just the schedules didn't mesh. But CJ will be back next week because we have two shows next week, Eric. Not only are we going to preview the playoffs, but of course we're going to preview the first race of the round of 16.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's already here, and we'll applaud NASCAR for getting from this pandemic to this weird schedule to now we are back on schedule, for lack of a better word. We got Daytona this weekend, and then the playoffs start with the whole normal playoffs. The tracks that are supposed to be there will be there, so we start next week.
Yeah, I can't wait. Before we get into a little bit about what's going to go on this weekend and next week, let's wrap up last week. You were at Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Indianapolis 500, and the big story coming out of the race was the end of the race.
Yeah,
I got to tell you, Eric, I don't watch enough of an IndyCar, as you know. And all I do is rip NASCAR for the silly rules, and we might see a win under yellow on Saturday night. It happens in these
true.
races at the big super speedways. It hasn't happened as lately. I think they've done a better job allowing the races to finish. I like that, but it'll happen again, and it happens, and we get the rain shortened crap we have to deal with, and we talk about how that could be rectified by moving the races up earlier. So there's still, trust me, a lot of things that we don't like about NASCAR and what they can do to improve their sport. But I did not know this was possible. I did not know that you can wreck with what were there, 6-7 laps to go, and then you can just sit there and watch them under caution, and the race was, where did that come from?
It's been that way. IndyCar doesn't have an overtime, and they try to finish under green when possible. It's just that, unfortunately, the circumstances to what happened didn't allow them to end under green. Or an IndyCar statement. At first, I'm thinking, I'm watching this. I'm like, they're surely going to red flag this, right? Like, why is another lap going by? When are they going to throw the red flag out?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I've talked IMS, IndyCar, and got statements, and now I see their understanding, because the wreck happened with 6 to go. So they had to come around, pick up the pace car. They crossed the finish line or the Art of Bricks, and there's 5 to go. So if you come back around again and red flag it, because for IndyCar is not like NASCAR where they don't have a starter inside the car. They have to be manually started by a guy, will start it, or a girl, can start the car from behind, and then off they go. So IndyCar had to have them stop either normally in pit road, but pit road was closed because when Spencer Pigot hit the attenuator, it just threw debris everywhere, and they couldn't get to pit road. So they would have had to have stopped somewhere on the front straightaway, because you can't have them stop in the backstretch and not be able to have somebody there to restart them. Problem is, you can't go down pit road. So if you come back down the front stretch, now you're wasting another lap. Then by time, say you get it cleaned up, started, go around, you have to take another lap again to get to the 1 to go signal, and then off you go. We'd have one lap. It'd have been a 1-lap shootout. Odds are, the way the restarts were, they weren't going to make it around without wrecking again. So that would have been a debacle. Could have been a safety hazard. So I get that aspect. But even with all of that, they said it would take at least an hour to an hour and a half to get the attenuator, everything fixed and raceable, ready to go again.
An hour and a half.
That's how bad damage he did to it. He tore that thing apart. And they have to have that at the end of pit road, as NASCAR, as same thing. They used to have those barrels and tires, and so that device for safety would have taken upwards of an hour and a half to get rebuilt and put back in there. And at that point, we're talking 7:30 by the time they even get a go back green. NBC wasn't going to stick with them. They had a playoff hockey. NBCSN, playoff hockey. So I think it was a combined decision. Would fans have really waited an hour and a half to watch one lap, or were they just going to tune off anyway? So they made the safe call. I now seeing that can see why they did that. It was just a perfect storm. If he didn't wreck with 6 to go, or how he wrecked, I think if he would have wrecked with 7 or 8 to go and was a normal, he hit one of the safer barriers and didn't hit that portion, we probably would have had a red flag and went back to green for a couple lap shootout. But it was a perfect storm, unfortunately, and I think that's 2020 for you right there with how that happened.
Well, I mean, on the other hand, you look at it as it's better that it happened in 2020 when there was no fans at the track.
True. That would have been, and I get there's a lot of people. I've got friends and family that are just casual IndyCar viewers, and like, man, I feel robbed of that finish. I was excited. This was getting good, and I don't even get to see it go back to green. And like I told him, I explained to them the circumstances and why they couldn't, but also, unfortunately, the way IndyCar takes it too, which I get. Not every football game you have a Hail Mary touchdown to win the game. Not every baseball game you have a walk-off home run. Not every basketball game you have a 3-point shot at the buzzer to win. I mean, sometimes you see blowouts. Sometimes you see a quarterback kneel to run the clock out. Sometimes they may only have a 10-point lead and they just run the ball for 6 straight minutes of trying to kill the clock. So that's kind of what we saw in the Indy 500. Unfortunately, it happened. But like they try to say, they're pure. Their races, if they're 500 miles, they last 500 miles. We're not going to have 9 overtime finishes just to get to a checkered flag. So, so I get what they're doing. I get why they did it, and unfortunately, it did potentially rob us of a good finish because it sounded like both cars were fuel saving.
Well, look, that's part of why the sport, or even NASCAR, both sports, isn't as popular in this country. Just is. And I don't think there is. I think that's why I like the way that NASCAR at least does try to appease the everyman in this country. They understand that that's been their whole effort the last 20 years or so, to try and get more mainstream. And I know there's a lot of purists that don't like it, but you can't have a really big sport, the numbers you want and sponsorship and dollars and all of that, if you don't appease the general consensus of mainstream USA. Now, I don't know whether or not I don't, and we're not going to spend too much time on it because we're not going to fix it, but I mean, I would have to, first thing I'm doing if I'm IndyCar is I'm trying to understand, okay, if this were to happen, or how do we prevent this from happening again regarding the accident and the delay? How do we delay? Because even if that happened in lap 10, you don't want people waiting an hour and a half for the race to start again.
No, that's, to me, I think the easiest fix would have like a backup one already built to where you can just disassemble whatever's left of that one, which wasn't much, clean the debris, and put the new one in. Because if that would have happened, then I think they would have red flagged it. But just because of that delay, like you said, it doesn't matter what lap it is. Nobody wants to wait that long. I mean, that just isn't good for everybody. So the first fix would be to maybe have a backup piece of that ready, so we can just take it out and just put this new big attenuator back in and clean up the debris, and off you go. And then maybe while we're racing, somebody can be working on the damaged one and put that back together. So if it happens again, you roll it back out there. So that would be my first thing is, yes, you got to have a backup to that thing.
All right. Try not to shake your video too much.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
By the way, good call on Sato, because he was, that was the last. He was your last sleeper pick in. You had what, Pillow? Was that his name?
Pillow? Oh, Pillow. Yeah. Alex Pillow.
Yes. Okay, yeah. So Pillow and Sato were your two sleeper picks. And boy, what a very disappointing race for Marco Andretti. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me how you have a car that runs that fast in qualifying, runs that fast in practice, then you get on out in the race and you don't do anything.
Yeah, and that, again, was good about being at the race, because you hear things and see things and get to do things that you wouldn't do if you weren't there, and found out that they put too much downforce on his car, and he said he knew immediately, like, hey, this isn't...
When did they put too much downforce on it?
Before the race.
Why would they do that?
Because it was a little bit warmer.
Why wouldn't
so
they?
Their thinking is... it's like what IndyCar can do, and like NASCAR's, you can change the setups all the way up until like you roll off to go green.
It just
So
doesn't
they,
make any sense.
yeah,
You're running a
they went
certain
more
way in practice and
conservative.
qualifying. You're kicking butt with the times, and then you decide, well, we're going to disregard all of that we just did for the past week, and we're going to change the car up. Oh, yeah, I'm going to put my, let's say, yeah, it's getting a little hot out here. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
Somebody should
and
be
everybody
fired over
else.
that.
Yeah, because it hurt him. He didn't have, and like we saw, his straightaway speed was just not there. He was
Terrible.
just getting past, and that was why it hurt him. And he's got good car control. He likes a looser race cars. So why they did that? Because the thing is, you could have went less downforce and put more on as the race went on,
Yes.
if needed. And I'm shocked that they didn't do that. I don't know why they started as max downforce as they did. It hurt them. It clearly hurt them, and they never made up
Yep.
for it. Whereas like a Scott Dixon, Sato, Rossi went a little bit lighter on downforce, and they used the track position to their advantage, and it worked. Well, Rossi, I guess, would be a prime example, is he went lighter on downforce, fast early. And when you get marred in traffic with less downforce, means your car in dirty air, it just wants to whip around, and that's what happened to him. To me, Marco should have went that strategy. It lost him the race. Plain and simple.
Let me know when when somebody with that team gets fired, because I want to know. I want to be with a smile on my face. All right.
Here's the thing: he owns that car.
Oh, so he can make the decision who gets fired.
He can make that. He's a part owner of the team, obviously, in Andretti Autosport. So
get it done.
if I were him, I would be like,
you're getting older. You don't have many of these left.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't won one yet. This just goes to show what better shot are you going to have than one you just had? I mean, the pole quickest car all month.
Terrible.
It's Indy. It's the odds are you may not have another car like that again. So yeah, that could have cost him his last shot of winning this race.
Okay, now into NASCAR, and the topic that ruled last week in NASCAR was Goodyear. A very interesting situation. I haven't heard much from it since last week, but still, that is something that at some point we're going to hear news pop up sooner or later. It's a bad look for Goodyear, and for them to kind of be, it's like they're blaming. It's like corporate is blaming someone that's running an office somewhere in some location across the country that's training Goodyear personnel, and we didn't know they were training them that way. That's not what we believe in. So I don't even know. Eric's connection has been lost here. He'll be back in a second, but hopefully, if you were with us last week, and that's still available on demand, you can check out. I mean, you can just go online and read everything about what happened with Goodyear and exactly how the organization commented on this just really terrible PR move that I haven't heard any explanation yet on whether it's going to be rectified. So let me see here. I tell you what, if we don't get Eric back here in a second, nope, he's officially off there. Let me shut this down, and we'll just call this the IndyCar report, even though I have Prime Sports NASCAR on there. But that's okay, because we just talked about Indy 500. So we'll do that. We'll come back, and we'll run an Indy, actually a Prime Sports NASCAR show.